After the war, we lost face, 2 million francs, and our emperor to Germany. We did, however, regain Victor Hugo, who had been living in self-imposed exile for his vehement attacks against imperialism. He returned to Paris and provided me with the crown of laurels that would finally make me a star. Victor Hugo, he was such a great genius. He was kind and witty, gallant, refined. I played the role of his little queen in Rubla, which swept me to a new height in my career. I received a letter from Perrin. He was the manager at the Comédie Française. He wanted me to rejoin their troupe. So I sadly left the Odeon Theatre. To refuse an offer at the world's most prestigious theatre, it would be a cataclysmic career mistake. I mean, not to mention the fact they were offering me much more money. And one does not wear a lovely wool coat when a mink is handy. So I went back to the Comédie Française, and I became the darling of Paris. Paris, they fell in love with me, and I fell madly in love with Monet Sully. He was the Adonis of Parisian theatre. He was so virile, he was so childishly beguiling. Yet sadly, Monet had the intellect of an ant. Sex, it is the thing which takes the least amount of time, and it causes the most amount of trouble. I was used to men of substance. I mean, not some poor boy who was paid exactly the same salary as I was. One day, Monet discovered I had gone to bed with another man. Oh, he was livid, so he shouted in front of the entire company, "You slept with that man!" "Not a week," I protested. So although the company, it was the most prestigious theatre, it was not the most convivial theatre to work at. Perrine and I, we were constantly at odds. I owed everything I had to him, ulcers, headaches, nausea. So I decided to spend as little time at the theatre as possible. Then I took up hot air ballooning. The first day my friends and I arrived at dawn, to see rise up above us the soft, plump, mushroom-shaped object I was before it. The rumor of our flight, it was soon out, but not in time for the press to catch us. And suddenly Perrine arrived. He's howling in disbelief as he went soaring off into the sky. I was enraptured in the clouds. I was sipping champagne. I was nibbling on sandwiches of goose pâté with my friends. Perrine, it lay beneath us in a gilt of glorious sunlight. With a turquoise sky, with soft, diaphanous clouds, they passed us by with spectral caresses. And everywhere there was silence. Such velvety silence. It was glorious, overwhelmingly glorious. And with the approach of twilight, the air became charged with poetry as we descended in unison with the sun, touching earth as it slipped, fiery red beneath the horizon. When I arrived home late that night, there was a letter awaiting me from Perrine, listing my caprices, my eccentricities, and announcing the theatre was fining me 1,000 francs for making an aerial escapade without his permission. How dare you fine me? As long as I fulfill my engagement, I shall do what I like with my life, you little troglodyte. It was all too strange of a situation to continue working under. So it was not surprising that the visit of the Comédie Française to France, to London, would cause the final rupture. Throughout my life, throughout my career, I was always plagued with horrific, paralyzing fits of stage fright. The more important the role, the more severe the seizure. So in June of 1879, I was to meet London across the footlights for the first time, where I was to perform the second act of Phaedra by Racine. Phaedra is the story of a young queen who is consumed with passion for her stepson. She is racked with guilt which annihilates her virtue and sunders her soul. And there was no Act One to build the character, to establish her horrific sense of guilt. I was terrified, 3 times I put on my makeup, and 3 times I took it off. I thought I looked too thin, too ugly, too short in my costume. There was no time to change. There was nowhere to retreat. I thought, hysterical at what I thought was going to be my theatrical demise. So I threw myself onto the stage like an angry sacrifice. My husband lives, I know me. I understand. I have confessed a love he will abhor. He lives, and I have wronged him. Say no more. I foresaw this, but you changed my course. Your tears won out over my just remorse. I might have died this morning, mourned and chafed, but I took your counsels and I died disgraced. Just Helen, think what I have done. My husband comes, and with him will be his son. I'll see the witness of my vile desire. Watch what countenance I greet his sire. Mindful of this his honor, will Hippolytus conceal the scandal of my passion? Do you feel? Deceiving both his sire and king, will he contain the horror he feels for me? His silence would be vain, what he'll have done. I know. I am not one of those false women who has either crime or never seem to blush at any time. I know my bad deeds. I recall them all. I think that in this place, each fault, each wall can speak. And impatient to accuse, they wait to give my trusting spouse the news. I'll die then. From these horrors I'll be free. Is it so sad a thing to cease to be? Death is not fearful to the suffering mind. The only fears the name that I leave behind to my poor children. What a dire bequest. Each holds the blood of Jove within his breast. But whatsoever pride of blood they share, a mother's crime's a heavy thing to bear. I tremble lest, befouled by such a stain, neither should dare to lift his head again. After we concluded my performance, I trained down to Liverpool to buy some lion cubs. I love big cats, anything junglish. I even consulted numerous physicians about grafting a tiger's tail to my buttocks. It would have made for marvelous entrances and exits. But none would assist me. Besides, the only thing useful enough to suit me it was this little cheetah. He looked very tense and he stopped in his little cage. And this lovely white wolf, he was fanged and fiery-eyed. Oh, he looked terrifying, but he was really a lamb. So I returned to London with my cheetah in a cage, my wolf on a leash, and also 6 little chameleons. And I introduced them to my 3 dogs, my parrot, and my monkey dog. And of course, my little menagerie made headlines in all the papers, causing more jealousies from company members and Monsieur Perry. So when I returned to London, I finally resigned from the Comédie Française. I could no longer tolerate the petty jealousies and deliberate slights inflicted on me by Perry. Sadly, I had only completed 5 years of my 20-year contract. And they fined me 100,000 francs. But I was free. I was free to follow my Pied Piper, Edward Charette, who lured me and my troupe to America. He spun golden dreams which he largely fulfilled, and he sometimes even surpassed. It was so hard to leave my son. As a child, Maurice, he likened me to a bird. His little mama bird, he would say. Because I would spread my wings, I would soar off to distant places at a moment's notice. Much like my mama, she left me when she went off with her lords and lovers. But where mama was dutiful, but distant, Maurice and I adored each other. And I always returned, with an arm full of presents and a heart full of kisses, so he forgave me. On the day of his birth, I held him for the first few moments of his life. And as I lay dying, he holds me for the last few moments of mine. So where was I? Oh yes, on to New York. It was a long trip on a leaky boat in bad weather. So we were anxious to make port. I had invited my little lady, Madame Gerard, to come with me. And when I looked out my little porthole, I saw two ships coming towards us. One was filled with reporters and officials, and the other with an orchestra playing the Marseillaise. So after the actress, I stood tall, and after my furs around me, and with a regal toss of the head, I turned to face the mob of reporters that had swarmed the ship and assailed me with a barrage of questions. Several photographers yelled, "We want a picture of you in your coffin." I'm mad. Would they never stop bothering me about that? I mean, the papers were always full of lurid rumors that I was a necrophile. Simply because I kept an open coffin in my bedroom. You see, at 15 I was very ill, and I was told that I would soon die. So to pick my own place of eternal rest, in fact, comforted me. It was really quite lovely. It was made of rosewood. It was elegantly lined with white satin, which I replaced religiously every 2 years when it began to yellow and fade. The apostrophes alone were enough to give one a heart attack. But it cupped my hips and circled my shoulders like a satin glove. It was a haven where I went to when I was in desperate need of solitude, or to cool the ardor of an aggressive lover, like those aggressive and uncontrollable reporters in New York. Soon the entire scene, it became much too much for me, so I merely fluttered my eyes, and I fainted into Edward Jarrett's strong arms. That was my first entrance into the New York theatrical world. For America, I picked a repertoire of 8 plays, in all but one of which I died nightly in various noble and ignoble manners. I died of poison, I died of a broken heart, I expired from old age, from murder, from suicide, dying gracefully, willingly, martyred or humiliated. I died 1,000 deaths across the nation, and very soon 52 cities could claim Sarah Bernhardt died here. One of the 8 plays I picked for my repertoire, it was an ancient play an old friend suggested called The Dame aux Cameras. I was vehemently opposed to it. The play was 28 years old. It never had any success for any theater or actress who starred in it. And the leading lady, she was a courtesan. I had enough trouble with the newspapers without dragging my family business, literally, on stage. But it was like reading the diary of my dear sweet sister Regina, who had lived her life as a courtesan, as had my mother and my aunt. But Regina, she lived her life with a vengeance. She rushed into death's arms, from consumption, exacerbated by endless rounds of morphine and debauchery, at the tender age of 18.